So, Quentin, welcome to the show and welcome back to the country. How does it feel to be back in Britain?
Well, it was very scary. But my agent said, you've lived so long that all your enemies are dead. So I'm here.
Now, I just wanted to say that you've always been a kind of a pioneer of self-expression. I mean, when you were a young man, you wore makeup and you dyed your hair. You were very upfront about your sexuality. What motivated you to do that?
Well, you see, I've become a national hero, but really I was just a hopeless case. And I couldn't do otherwise than I did. When I was a child, I waltzed around the house in clothes belonging to my mother and my grandmother that I'd found in a box room, saying, today I am a beautiful princess. What my parents thought, I don't know.
And this was back in the 1920s and the 1930s. What kind of a gay scene was there in London at that time?
Well, there wasn't really a gay scene. There were gay parties, drag parties, and it was a subscription dance, as it's called. Someone came up to you in the street and handed you a little piece of paper and said it was ½ a crown. And if you paid ½ a crown, you could go to a room over Woolworths, and there you could wear your drag and dance. And of course, everyone said it was a secret, but the police always heard of it, and they always raided it. And they always took people away in feathered headdresses in the Black Marias. They couldn't get into the Black Marias because they were so overdressed. But still...
That wasn't the policeman, that was the... Was it easy to meet other gay people, though, at the time?
It was difficult to meet customers or clients.
What do you mean when you say customers or clients?
Well, men who wanted to go with you, you had to be... somebody that they could, when they by mistake met somebody from the office, they had to say, this is my nephew. I was nobody's nephew.
But so were you a male prostitute then?
Well, we all were. What could we do? How could I earn a living?
I thought that later on you became a life model.
Well, yes, later on. That was when I was about 34, I think. I wrote books, I illustrated books and did book covers, I taught tap dancing, I was a model in the art schools. I never had any talent for any of these things. But what else could I do?
Did you have a talent for male prostitution, though?
Oh, no, even that I did badly. You see, what men want is not someone who's a great deal of trouble and has to be wooed and has to be all that bother. The reason why men go with boys is because they don't have to woo them. They don't have to take them flowers. They don't have to tell them they love them. But you had to tell me that you loved me. You had to tell me how beautiful I was. And so, of course, it was a waste of time.
But how did the sort of mechanics of it work? I mean, where did you hang around? Did you hang around on the streets, or...?
You hang around on the streets, and all the words of love I've ever known are to pass a dark doorway with a man who says, this'll do.
And then where would you take them to?
You took them into dark doorways, you took them into dark corners, you sometimes got them to take you home with them, and but they wouldn't do that if they could help it, because you see, you're going to pass the doorman.
Yes.
And then that would require an explanation, or at least a very surprised look. So it was very difficult.
Well, looking back on that, I mean, do you regret that you went through that?
No, I don't regret it, because you can only regret things if you had an alternative. If you look back and think, why did I marry that person when I could have married that person? Why did I stay so long in that job when I could have done that job? But I did the jobs from which I was not evicted. I stayed in the rooms from which I was not turned out. I knew the people who could put up with the disgrace, and that was all. So I never had any opportunity to regret anything.
So after the 30s, obviously the war came along, and now reading your book, The Naked Civil Servant, you describe that as a fantastic time for you. I think the quote is, London in the war was like a paved double bed.
That's right.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, London in the war, there was a blackout, and you only met people by braille. I met you before, you see, so it was all quite easy then.
And didn't you have a big thing about all the servicemen and the uniforms and everything?
Well, it was the Americans, because people were very unkind, the English, about Americans. They said, well, they've got all the money, they've got the good uniforms, they can give the girls bars of chocolate and nylons, no wonder they're a success. The Americans were a success because they listened. You see, no Englishman ever listens to what a girl says. My brother was never without a girl in tow. He took her to a pub, seated her on a stool, and every 20 minutes he said, "You all right?" And she said. And when she'd gone, he said, "What a boring woman." And I used to say, "What did you say?" To which she could reply. But Englishmen never speak to women.
So did you ever have any serious kind of love affairs or relationships?
No, I didn't. I knew a man who came to see me every weekend for 4 years, and my life became a series of weekends for which I prepared and from which I recovered. He came to see me with a little bundle of his possessions, and I said, "You can put them there while you're looking for a room." 4 long, dark years later, they were still there. And I never left him a key, and I never let a weekend pass without saying, "When you have a room of your own." He never got one.
So after the war, in the 1970s, quite late in life, you found fame when the book, The Naked Civil Servant, came out, and then obviously later on the film. Was it something that you'd always wanted?
Well, I enjoy fame. Of course, you see, in America, fame is respectable. But in England, no one thinks like that. In fact, in England, you must never be seen rushing toward the cameras.
So another thing you did, again, very late in life, I think when you were in your 70s, was you actually emigrated to America.
Yes, someone in America said, "You came to America when most people go into a nursing home."
What about modern gay culture in America? What do you think of that?
In America, now, gay people are more manly than anybody else. There is a restaurant called Clyde's, and the only reason that you would know you weren't in a construction canteen was because everyone's so clean. But they've all got tractor boots, pre-ruined jeans, kitchen tablecloth shirts, and small moustaches. They look wonderful, but it can't be true of all of them.
And finally, I just want to ask you about how you lived. You've always lived alone. In Manhattan, you live alone. In London, you lived alone for a very long time. Don't you ever get lonely?
Well, I've never been put to the test because I've always lived in big cities. And if I'd stayed alone in my room for 4 or 5 days, and I thought this is getting boring, I would only have to reconstruct myself and walk from where I live up to 14th Street. And on the way, I would meet someone who would say, "What is the secret of the universe?" And I would say, "Come in here and I'll tell you." And I would go into a cafe and talk to them.
It's the first time you've been back to the country for quite some time. Did you ever imagine that when you would come back, you'd be appearing on the BBC on a show called Gaytime TV?
I never thought it would be possible. Where will it all end?
Well, Quentin, it's been absolutely wonderful chatting to you. You're going to stay on the sofa for the rest of the show. But in the meantime, please thank Quentin Crisp.
What do you think of the sort of younger gay people nowadays in comparison with when you were a young man?
When I was young, there was no gay people, well, the word gay hadn't been invented, but I never heard the word homosexual until I was about 19 or 20. Nobody ever discussed it. When they did, they always said, not a practicing homosexual. I've never known a non-practicing homosexual, but they wanted to avoid the terrible thought of the sex. And now sex is everywhere, and sex is the entire question, and that would get boring for me. No, I don't think I would. I'm not a masochist in the true sense. I haven't reversed the sensations of pain and pleasure, but I do think that if we don't suffer, we shan't know that we lived.
You just don't want to suffer in a dungeon?
But I don't want to suffer mechanically. I don't want to suffer. I don't want the whole thing set up for me.
Anyway, unusually, our gay guide this evening is actually for straight people, because let's face it, they sometimes need help too. Here's Rona with a masterclass for straight actresses. I really loved the Sharon Stone bit with the wig, and that was fantastic.
The wig was fantastic, wasn't it? And any excuse just to wear a dress for me as well, which I don't usually. Now, Quentin, you were portrayed by a fine heterosexual actor. Do you think he played you convincingly? I'm speaking, of course, of John Hurt.
I thought he was wonderful. He is born to play victims. When he'd played me, he played Caligula, which is only me in a sheet. And then he played the Elephant Man, which is only me with a paper bag over my head. And finally, he played the ultimate victim in 1984. And it's very difficult for an actor to play a victim, because actors have to fight their way forward and say, don't employ any of them, give it to me. And then they've got to backpedal and be a victim, and it's very difficult for actors to do that. But he's very good at it.
Do you sympathise with Diana and the problems and trauma she's been through?
Not in the least. She was Lady Diana before she was Princess Diana. She knew the racket. Royal marriages have nothing to do with love. Kings have always behaved as badly as they could, and she must have known that Prince Charles would behave badly. And now she wants money.
Listen, Quentin, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show. You've been a wonderful guest.
Thank you.
It's been an honour to meet you. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Quentin Crisp.
Thank you very much, Quentin. It's been a real pleasure.